I thought she was just awkward, but she tracked my habits, wore my grief like jewelry, and said she'd only feel loved once I was gone. I told myself I was going to be supportive, that I'd show up with a smile and fake my way through it. But when Lena opened her mouth at the worst possible moment, right after Rita died, I realized I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't pretend to like someone who used my grief against me and tried to erase the one person who meant everything to me. My name's Emily. I'm 26, a full-time personal nurse and part-time student living in Hartford, Connecticut. My brother Lucas is 28. He just married Lena, who's 25 and has no surviving family. Because of that, my parents bent over backward trying to make her feel included. I did too at first. I met Lena nearly 2 years ago. She walked up to me at a family barbecue, grinning like we were old friends, and said, "Everyone in your family talks about you all the time. I couldn't wait to meet you." I gave her polite small talk and then went to join my aunts. But as the night wore on, she kept inserting herself into every private conversation I was having. I brushed it off. Maybe she was just eager to fit in. But it kept happening. Every holiday, every gathering, she'd cut into whatever conversation I was in. I tolerated it because Lucas seemed happy. But then came the engagement. The night they were going to announce it, I had to leave suddenly because Rita, my 98-year-old patient and the woman I considered a third grandmother, had fallen and fractured her hip. Lucas pulled me aside privately to tell me about the engagement before I left. I hugged him, congratulated him, and then Lena barged in. "Why would you tell her before the announcement? She's not even staying for it," she said. Lucas calmly explained the situation. Lena rolled her eyes and muttered something about firstborn privilege. I ignored it. But that wasn't the end. Over the following months, Rita's health declined. I was her primary caregiver, alongside her pregnant great-granddaughter, who lived with us. She was funding my second degree. She trusted me, loved me like family. So when she passed away 3 days ago, I was wrecked. That's when Lena crossed a line she can't come back from. We were preparing to honor Rita's last wish, to have her ashes buried at the cabin where she grew up in Vermont. Her great-granddaughter planned the trip for the two of us next week. My mom asked to come too. But when we shared this at dinner, Lena lost it. "You're taking a trip 2 days before the wedding?" she snapped. "Do you even care about your brother?" My mother calmly explained it was just a one-day trip, and we'd be back the night before the wedding. But Lena kept pushing, accusing us of prioritizing an old lady over family. And when she said, "She wasn't even your real family, Emily," "I am. I'll be the mother of your nieces and nephews," something broke in me. I snapped. I told her Rita was my family, that Lena wasn't even a friend to me, let alone family. That if it weren't for Lucas, I wouldn't have tried this hard to include her in the first place. Lena burst into tears, claiming she just wanted to feel like part of our family. But in that moment, I didn't care anymore. Rita had just died. And instead of offering condolences, Lena had spent the entire day nagging me about bridesmaid dresses, table settings, and guest lists. Now, I don't even want to go to the wedding. I love my brother. He even picked out my dress. But I feel numb, sad, angry, and most of all, tired. Tired of trying to create a bond with someone who sees me as a checklist item to complete her fantasy of belonging. And if she says one more thing like that again, I know I'll lose it, for real this time. You'd think losing someone like Rita would be the emotional low point. But no, the funeral, simple, beautiful, painful, was only the beginning of the unraveling. We buried Rita's ashes the next morning, just as she'd wanted, in the clearing behind the cabin she'd grown up in. It was me, her great-granddaughter Lily, and my mom. Snow still dusted the trees in early April, the Vermont air cold enough to sting your lungs. My mom said a few words. I placed a photo of Rita as a young woman inside the urn, and Lily set down a sprig of rosemary. We didn't cry loudly. We just stood there, letting the silence wrap around us like a shared memory. We drove back late that night, arriving around 1 a.m. The wedding was less than 18 hours away. I told myself I could do this. I could fake it. For Lucas. But I barely slept. My dress hung untouched in its plastic cover. I stared at the ceiling until the morning sun painted lines across my room, thinking about the years Rita had guided me through. She'd helped me finish nursing school when I nearly gave up. She was there when I had my first panic attack. She was the first person who made me feel like I wasn't too much or too weird. And now she was just gone. I arrived at the church late on purpose. Lena was already inside, flitting between guests like a pageant queen on Red Bull. Her gown looked like it was dipped in glitter, and her face lit up with this overly rehearsed warmth that made my skin crawl. But the moment she saw me, her entire body stiffened. She smiled, fake, twitchy, and moved toward me like she was on a mission. "Emily, you made it," she squealed. "I was so worried you wouldn't come, especially after the little meltdown you had." I said nothing, just stared at her. She backed up half a step, caught off guard. "I just want us to be close," she whispered, voice softening. "You're the firstborn, and I always imagined you'd be like a big sister to me." And here it was again, that same guilt trap line about being family. Only this time, it didn't work. My silence said everything. The ceremony started. My brother looked exhausted, and when he glanced at me, just for a second, his face crumpled into something I didn't expect. Regret. "There's something you should know about Lucas. He's the golden boy, always trying to fix things, to be the peacemaker." And in that moment, I realized he wasn't blind. He knew. About Lena. About all of it. He just didn't know how to stop it. After the ceremony, during the reception, I slipped away to the back of the venue and sat on the stairs. That's when my cousin Rachel found me. "She's at it again," she muttered, eyes wide. "Lena told Aunt Jeannie that you skipped dress shopping because you were too self-absorbed with your fake grandma's funeral." Her words. I laughed, but it was one of those hollow, broken laughs. Not because it was funny, but because it was too on-brand to be real. "Why does she care so much about me?" I asked, more to myself than Rachel. Rachel hesitated. "Because she wants what you have. The closeness. The way your mom dotes on you. Lucas's loyalty. And she doesn't know how to earn it. So she tries to steal it." And just like that, something inside me clicked. This wasn't about me being the firstborn. This wasn't about family roles. Lena had grown up alone, unloved, unwanted. She'd clawed her way into our family thinking she could fill the void. But she didn't come in with empathy. She came in with hunger. Later that evening, Lucas found me again, this time in the empty bridal suite. His bow tie was undone, and his hands trembled slightly as he picked at the thread on his sleeve. "She said something awful again, didn't she?" he asked. I nodded. "She told Aunt Jeannie that I was faking my grief." He shut his eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so damn sorry." There was a pause. I wanted to scream at him, to shake him, to ask him why he was marrying someone who could say something like that. But then he whispered something I wasn't prepared for. "She hates that you and I are close. She said it makes her feel invisible." "Then why try to make me invisible?" I whispered back. He looked at me, eyes brimming. "Because she thinks replacing you means she wins. But she doesn't realize you can't replace someone you never bothered to understand." We sat there in silence. I didn't say I forgave him. I didn't say I'd be okay. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like my brother saw me again. But that's not the end. Because what I found out the next day changed everything. And no one in our family saw it coming. The wedding was over. The fake smiles were done. I was finally back home, curled into the armchair Rita used to sit in with her crocheting needles, breathing in the fading scent of lavender and antique wood. I hadn't cried yet. Not really. At least not the kind of cry where everything inside you breaks at once. That moment came the next morning. Lily, Rita's great-granddaughter, was packing up some of Rita's old journals and books to donate to the community center. We were sorting through boxes when I noticed one I didn't recognize, tucked at the bottom of the wardrobe in the guest room. "Did you check this one?" I asked. She shook her head. "I thought it was just old paperwork." But it wasn't. Inside was a collection of letters. Dozens, maybe hundreds. All written in neat cursive, sealed in pale blue envelopes with no stamps. All addressed to me. The first one was dated 5 years ago, the week after I moved in to take care of Rita full-time. "Dear Emily," it read, "I've seen how tired you are. How quietly you carry things no one your age should have to. If no one else ever says this, I'm proud of you." I couldn't breathe. Each letter was a time capsule. One for the week I failed a nursing exam. One after Rita overheard me crying on the porch. One when she saw me skip Christmas with my family to stay and nurse her through pneumonia. Every time I thought I was invisible, she had been writing to me, watching, loving me silently, with the kind of presence that doesn't need attention to be real. I broke down on the floor, sobbing in the kind of way that tears your throat raw. Lily found me there, letters clutched in both hands, whispering, I didn't know she did this." It was the deepest act of love I'd ever seen. And then I remembered Lena, who had dismissed Rita as just an old lady. who mocked the woman who had quietly become the only mother figure I'd ever really had. That afternoon, my mother called me. "Emily," she said gently, "I need to talk to you. Alone." I met her at a small cafe off Maple Street. She looked pale, hands fidgeting with her necklace. "I didn't know how bad it had gotten," she admitted. "Lucas told me everything. About the things Lena's said. About how she treats you." She paused. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "She feels like you stole Lucas from her." I blinked. "What?" "She thinks the bond you have with him is unnatural. That you overshadow her. That she'll never have a place while you're around." It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't awkwardness. It was something darker, obsession dressed up as family affection. Suddenly, I remembered something from my childhood. A memory I hadn't thought about in years. It was winter, and I was 6. My mom had just gotten a new job and was working late. Lucas, 8 at the time, had a nightmare and crawled into my bed. I remember holding his hand until he stopped crying. Rita was the one who found us the next morning. She said, "That's what siblings are. Each other's safe place." Lena didn't understand that. To her, closeness was possession. Connection was competition. And that's when I knew I had to tell Lucas the truth, everything. Not just what Lena had said, but what I'd found. Because there was one more letter I hadn't opened yet. It was sealed differently, red wax instead of blue. And it wasn't from Rita. It was from my father. "I left this here for you in case something ever happened to Rita," it began. "She promised me she'd keep you safe. You've always been different, Emily. Not weaker, stronger, but the kind of strong that makes people uncomfortable." I stared at the last line, heart pounding. Don't let anyone convince you that loyalty means silence. Especially when you know someone's hurting the people you love. That night, I called Lucas. Told him I needed to talk. No distractions. No Lena. He agreed. We met at our old hideout, an abandoned park near the lake where we used to skip stones as kids. He looked older now. Tired. Ash in his eyes that wasn't there before. And when I finally told him about the letters, about Lena's comments, about what Mom had said, he didn't argue. He just stared at the lake, face unreadable. "I think I married someone who doesn't love anyone," he said quietly. "Only what people give her. Status. Belonging. Control." He turned to me. "I just wanted to save her. But I never asked if she wanted to be saved." There was a pause. And then he whispered, "Emily, do you think I made a mistake?" I didn't answer right away. Because it wasn't my place to tell him what to feel. But I knew what I had to do next. Because Lena hadn't just targeted me out of awkwardness. She had studied me. I wasn't just an obstacle. I was the obstacle. And what I discovered next, what I found buried in the guest book of their wedding website, proved it. I wasn't looking for anything. That's what made it worse. It was 2 nights after my talk with Lucas. I still wasn't sleeping much, mostly cycling through Rita's letters, letting her voice echo in my head like a lullaby that never quite reached peace. I was scrolling through email to unsubscribe from all the useless wedding newsletters when I stumbled across one with the subject, "Lena and Lucas. A love to celebrate. View your guest book messages." I clicked without thinking. At first, it was innocent. Family well wishes, congratulations, photos of guests smiling in rented tuxedos. But something told me to dig deeper. So I clicked on the admin link, because I'd helped Lucas set it up months ago, and scrolled through the site editor. And that's when I saw it. A draft message. Unsent. Still saved under Lena's account. It read, "I know Emily thinks she's the moral compass of this family. But when she's out of the picture, they'll finally love me like they love her. Lucas will see who really supports him. Who deserves him." I froze. Not just because of what it said, but because of the file attached. It was a photo. A screenshot of a private group chat. For participants. All strangers. Usernames like @Rosalind_bride, @HeirloomBlood, and @Mataforu86. It was a roleplay forum. Lena wasn't just venting. She was fantasizing. She'd been posting in a thread about reclaiming your role in a fractured family. Her posts were written like fanfiction, disturbingly detailed stories where the narrator drives a wedge between siblings to become the favorite. The girl in the story always wins, always ends up the beloved one, and the original daughter disappears. Sometimes it was metaphorical. Sometimes it wasn't. My heart pounded. My skin went cold. I knew what I had to do. I printed the screenshot. I saved the chat archive. And I sent one message. To Lucas. "We need to talk. In person. Tonight." He came over around midnight, looking like he hadn't slept either. I handed him the pages without a word. He read, slowly, carefully, and when he reached the end, he looked up at me with eyes that no longer held disbelief, just heartbreak. She wanted to erase you, he whispered. And I let her. There was a long silence. Then he did something I hadn't expected. He started laughing. A low, bitter laugh. You know what the first thing she ever said to me was? I've never been loved before, but I can learn. He sank into the armchair, burying his face in his hands. She didn't learn, Emily. She studied. She copied how we speak, what we value, who we protect, and she twisted it all into a ladder she could climb. I sat beside him. Lucas, this isn't just toxic. It's dangerous. He nodded slowly. I know. And then, just when I thought I understood the depth of it, he said something that took the air out of my lungs. She went through your things, Em. Months ago, while you were out with Mom. She told me she was just curious about how someone like you works. She even made notes in a journal. Said she was documenting what it takes to be accepted into a real family. I couldn't speak. My throat closed up. My hands started to shake. She said I shouldn't worry, Lucas added. That it was part of her therapy. That's when the realization landed. She wasn't trying to become part of the family. She was trying to become me. And the final piece hit when I opened the dresser drawer I hadn't touched since the wedding. Inside was a bridesmaid gift bag, one I'd never fully unpacked. Tucked beneath the tissue paper, wrapped in soft velvet, was a necklace I hadn't noticed before. At first I thought it was just a coincidence. But I held it up to the light, and there it was. The engraving. Rita. Her name. Carved in cursive. On a charm Lena had claimed was custom-made for the wedding party. She had worn it during the ceremony. In all the photos. It wasn't a tribute. It was possession. I confronted her the next morning. I waited until she was alone. At the cafe where she liked to pretend to be normal. She saw me and actually smiled like nothing was wrong. Emily, so glad you came. I wanted to talk about family. I dropped the necklace on the table. You went through my things. You stole my grief. You pretended to care about Rita just to wear her like an accessory. She blinked, tilted her head. I was trying to honor her. I leaned in. You were trying to be me, but you couldn't, and you never will. Her face froze. Then she whispered, Lucas won't believe you. He already does. She paled. I stood and walked away, heart pounding, hands shaking. But for the first time in weeks, my breath came easier. But that's not the end. Not even close. Because 1 week later, Lucas made a decision. And the entire family would feel the aftershock. 1 week later, my brother showed up at my doorstep with a suitcase in one hand and a file folder in the other. No warning. No text. Just Lucas. Face pale, eyes bloodshot, mouth set in that grim line he used to get as a kid when he was trying not to cry. I left her, he said. I didn't say anything. I just stepped aside and let him in. He dropped the suitcase by the door and handed me the folder. Inside was a copy of their marriage certificate and an annulment request, half-filled and signed. I told her this morning, he said quietly, collapsing into Rita's old armchair. Told her I saw the messages, the journal, everything. She said it was fiction, said I was weak for not protecting her. He looked at me. She didn't even deny going through your stuff. Just said she was researching empathy, like it was a school project. He exhaled hard. I packed my things, told her I needed time. She followed me out the door screaming that I was choosing my fake family over her. Lucas went silent, staring at the corner of the room where Rita's old rocking chair used to sit. And maybe I am, because I realized something, Em. His voice cracked. You were never the one standing between me and Lena. You were the only one standing with me. That's when I broke. The tears I'd been holding in for days came spilling out as I knelt in front of him and grabbed his hands. I thought I lost you. I whispered. You almost did, he said, his voice like broken glass. But not because of you. Because I wanted to fix someone who didn't want to be real. Later that night, my mom came over. She hugged Lucas tighter than I've ever seen her hug anyone. And for the first time since the funeral, the house felt warm again. But Lena didn't go quietly. She sent texts, emails, voicemails crying, accusing, threatening, begging. Lucas didn't answer. Then came the last message. A photo of the two of them, framed with the words, If I can't have this family, no one can. That was when we blocked her on everything. Lucas stayed with me for a few weeks. We took turns cooking, stayed up late playing the old video games we used to fight over, and talked more honestly than we had in years. We cried about Rita. We laughed about how terrible we are at making pancakes. And one night, sitting on the porch with hot tea and the cool spring air, Lucas looked over and said, "She wanted to replace you. But no one can replace the person who holds the heart of the family." I still think about that. Now, months later, Lena's just a name we don't say. The annulment is finalized. Lucas started therapy, and I've gone back to school full-time, still living in Rita's house, slowly filling it with the kind of peace she always carried. Sometimes I still find her letters in books, tucked into coat pockets, left inside recipe journals. She left me a map of her love, of who I was when I thought I was invisible. And Lucas? He thanks me every time we talk, not for saving him, but for being the one who never stopped seeing him even when he was too lost to see himself. The truth is, we didn't just survive Lena. We remembered who we were without her. And no one, not grief, not obsession, not a fractured past, can ever take that away.